Funding for this program was provided by the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting.
Jerry Stovall seemed to be Mr. Everything at West Monroe High School. First All-Stater in football, president of the Letterman's Club, Mr. West Monroe High, yearbook sports editor, and senior class president. A football scholarship at LSU brought him more honors as a Tiger running back and kick returner from 1960 to 1962, the year he married Judy, his high school sweetheart. That same year, future College Football Hall of Famer Jerry Stovall was voted consensus All-American and was the runner-up for the Heisman Trophy.
Always did a whole lot more than he needed to do and a lot more than you coached him to do. He just had that inner fire, and that's what made him one of the great athletes I think I've coached.
In 1963, Jerry was the #1 draft choice of the St. Louis Cardinals, where he was a starting defensive back and two-time All-Pro. He left the NFL in 1971 and worked as assistant coach for Paul Dietzel at South Carolina, then moved on to LSU. Jerry served as the Tigers' head football coach for 4 years, a roller coaster ride that included being named both SEC and Walter Camp National Coach of the Year in 1982.
Sports is what he did for a living, but his true passion is his family.
He's all about family and loyalty and unconditional love.
He raised himself to a large degree, yet he has been a phenomenal father.
Daddy's belief in God and his faith directs every action that he takes.
Jerry teaches Bible school on Sundays, and he's very zealous, but he's very open, and he preaches by his actions, not his words. He just does it day in and day out, and he's as consistent as that as he is in his work habits and work ethic.
After a stint in banking, Jerry returned to the world of sports, first as athletic director at Louisiana Tech, then as president and CEO of the Baton Rouge Area Sports Foundation.
When people think of Dad, I think they probably think of an honest, hard-working person. Whatever he does, if it's his job or a volunteer position, helping at the church, mowing the yard, he works hard.
Growing up, he taught us that you have to have your family, you have to be a part of a team, and you try harder than anybody else out there, because whatever talents God has given you, if you try harder, you're going to do your best, and you're probably going to end up winning.
He's just a country boy from North Louisiana that did the very best with what he's got. And I think truly that's the way he thinks of himself.
Jerry Stovall, doing his best for his God, his family, and his community. A real Mr. Everything and a true Louisiana legend. Hello, I'm Beth Courtney. Welcome to this edition of Louisiana Legends. I'm in the home of Jerry and Judy Stovall, a lovely home. And Jerry, what a pleasure to be able to visit with you. First, I guess many people probably know this already, but for those who don't know it, you grew up in West Monroe. What was that like?
It was fun. It was a rural area, and the children were allowed to run the streets and play the sport, not with travel teams, just kids pick up games in the backyard. So it was a lot of freedom, a lot of energy, a lot of growing, a lot of fun.
Did you always know you were going to be a football player?
No. Everybody did everything. We played kick the can and 99 other games. We didn't have access to uniforms until you got to be 10 or 12 years old. So I played baseball as my first love.
You told me you were the absolute worst basketball player in the world. Is that true?
Oh, that's true. I was the worst high school basketball player in the history of the High School Athletic Association, bar none.
But what was your favorite sport?
Early on, it was baseball. And then when my high school baseball coach, Dan McClure, was also our assistant football coach, and almost like a dad to me, took care of me in school, made sure I behaved. And he convinced me that I was not good enough to go beyond high school baseball. He had gone to AAA baseball, which was very good. Mm-hmm. And he convinced me that going to college probably for me would be in the realm of football. So I followed his advice as best I could.
I guess we say in your little profile that you were Mr. Everything as you were in high school. And was it hard moving from a small environment to a university environment. Was that a big transition for you?
Well, part of it was when you consider on Saturday night in Tiger Stadium, then we had 60,000 people before all the expansion, and we didn't have 60,000 people in West Monroe. When you consider that I played in front of maybe 1,500 people in the football game at West Monroe, and now you're looking at the 60,000 minimum wherever we went to play. In a classroom of 150 versus 20 or 30, all of that was different, but I roomed with a young man named Danny Newman from Tallulah, so we had a lot in common.
Things are so different now. It seems like there was a certain innocence about football back then. The coaches weren't paid as much. The whole pressure of big time football. People were intense, but it wasn't quite as high a profile. Did you find that even back then there was a pull and tug between your grades and studying and your football career?
Left up to me and every athlete, yes. But I was fortunate under Paul Dietzel and Charlie McClendon. They had an incredible idea about you had to be a student athlete in order to play. There was a different mentality when you came. Freshmen were not eligible, Beth, which was a great rule. So that you came from high school to college. That first year you got acclimated academically. Many of us were redshirted the sophomore year. So you may have been out of high school for 2 years before you ever walked on that stadium field to play, and I think that was always good. Both of those situations were good for the athlete.
You played for Coach Dietzel. Can you think of a story that exemplifies his coaching style for you back then?
Well, before he left, Judy and I decided we wanted to get married. And marriage scholarship was a very difficult thing to get. You had to go to the coach and talk about it. So Judy and I decided we would get married. So I went to see Coach Dietzel, and it was after our sophomore year, we were going to an Orange Bowl. So I went to see Coach Dietzel and told him Judy and I were going to get married, as he knew. And I'd already asked him for a marriage scholarship, and he'd agreed. But I said, Coach, the guys that are married are taking their wives. So if Judy and I move our marriage up, it would be a good idea, don't you think, if she was able to go to the bowl game with me. And he thought for a few moments. And he looked at me and he said, Jerry, I don't think that's a very good idea. In fact, if you get married, if you move your wedding up and get married before the bowl game, not only can Judy not go, you can't go either. So I got up, walked out, and said, thank you. I called her on the phone and said, I think it's a good idea just to leave everything the way it is. So he was a stickler for a lot of rules and regulations. Coming from the military like he did, bomber pilot for 27 missions in World War II. He set a pattern, and he caused us to understand, I think, a lot of the individual sacrifices are things that you needed to do in proper order.
You were the runner-up for the Heisman Trophy. Was that a disappointment, or were you just glad to be nominated? I mean, what is the...
Well, it's a totally different world. You didn't think about it then. It wasn't something where everybody in the world was asking you and interviewing you. You're going to go to New York and put on the extravaganza that they do. The teammates were talking. Said, "Have you heard anything?" "No, I haven't heard anything." And it's one of those things you didn't aspire to. It wasn't highly publicized, and it was more of a team honor than the individual that it has become now, I think.
Compare football when you played it and as it is now. Do you reflect on it? Do you think you're nostalgic for the old ways or happy about the new?
I'm a throwback. I'm one of those guys.
You don't want to wear leather helmets.
No, I was a little bit beyond that.
I'm just kidding.
Not far, but beyond that. I think the idea that the idea that a coach would come and stay a long period of time, that you were an athlete and you went to get a degree, that when you went to play, you learned the game, you had great respect, one, for yourself, for your teammates. You had a lot of respect for the sport. When you think that you're playing in the Southeastern Conference with and against some of the best athletes in the country, being coached by some of the very best coaches in the country, there's an amount of pride that you begin to establish. You walk with a confidence step. It's not cockiness at all. It's not saying we're better than anybody. It's just that we have something that's very important to us as ours. When you think that my time at LSU, Beth, we had 2 athletes that were president of the student body. When has that happened again? We had the highest grade point average of any male fraternity on campus except honor classes. When has that happened again? When you begin to think about the leadership that was being taught for athletics, yes, but for citizenship, I think that then was a much better time to grow up than now.
Well, knowing about you, Jerry Stovall, anyone who knows you well knows that you do indeed, the love of your life is Judy. And how long have you all been married?
49 years.
That's pretty good.
It is. That's good. One of these days we're going to find out what makes it work, and
That's
it'll be
right.
good.
And how many children?
We have 2 children, Jay and Jody, and we have 5 grandchildren, so we're blessed.
Oh, you are indeed. And what was the NFL like back then? St. Louis Cardinals.
Well, we weren't very good. I came from one of the very best at LSU, best coaches, best trainers, best facilities, and went to an organization that was less than that. They had not been a consistent winner. And we didn't do an awful lot to turn them around and take them to the championship. But as all sports, you meet some of the most wonderful people in all the world as athletes, and made some friends that I apologize that I cannot tell you where some of them are living now, but if they walked in the door right now, we'd hug and embrace and spend some time together. It was a good time for us. It was young in our married life. Our children were both born in St. Louis, so we just we were afforded tremendous opportunities that very few people would get to have.
But did you ever think about you wanted to come back to Louisiana?
Wanted to come back to Louisiana and wanted to coach. I thought I wanted to go to dental school. I completed my first year of dental school and my first year in the NFL, and then decided that was not what I wanted to do. I talked to
Why?
Coach.
You didn't like it?
I just didn't like the idea of Jerry Stovall going to a small office, staying there, and working inside somebody's mouth for the next 40 or 50 years of my life. Mm-hmm. And I just didn't want to do that. Kind of traumatic for me to have to tell my father-in-law, because he liked very much his daughter being married to pro athlete dentist to be. He wasn't too excited about pro athlete college coach to be. But I had a chance to go into college coaching, and to be under the 2 men that coached me, and Paul Dietzel and Charlie McClendon. There aren't very many people that lucky.
We visited with Paul Dietzel. Charlie McClendon's no longer with us. He was a very different kind of coach, wasn't he?
Oh yes, they were totally different, and I think that was one of the great things about them. You could compare one to the other. When Coach McClendon was Coach Dietzel's #1 assistant from a defensive standpoint, and then my senior year was Coach McClendon's first year as head coach, and he was Coach Mack as an assistant, and when he became a head coach, he stayed Coach Mack. You know, he didn't try to do anything differently. He just be himself, and he's still won more games in LSU football history than any other coach.
But he had a very sort of, off left tackle and a cloud of dust, off right tackle.
Yeah.
It was my time in college.
Yeah.
We all say that.
And he did, but the big thing, the idea is not to run right or left more than the other. The idea is to win, and he won a bunch.
Well, you had time in the spotlight as head coach, and how did that feel?
Part of it was wonderful. I will tell you candidly, however, if I had known going in what I knew coming out is demanded of a head football coach, I'm not sure that Judy and I would have made the decision we did. That it's so demanding and it's so all-consuming. And now they weren't paying $4.5 million or whatever they pay coaches today. I might still be coaching if that was that. But it was wonderful to be able to be a part of the LSU tradition and share it with other young men, to give them a chance that I had been given. There were a lot of young men that we recruited, and their family, no one had ever been to college. Now, to be the first one in their bloodline to go to school like I was, to be able to sit in somebody's home and offer them that opportunity is pretty good.
I'm sitting here in their beautiful home, and I don't see any big sports trophies around. Are they somewhere in another room?
No, they're gone.
And why is that?
They don't mean anything to anybody but me, but the thing that they represent are the people that we fell in love with in athletics. So I'm not one to have a trophy room or a lot of other things like that.
It's interesting you're going to be going and having a new award, though, soon. Tell us about that.
Well, in July, Judy and I will go with the family to South Bend, Indiana, to be enshrined into the National Football Foundation College Hall of Fame. We've been inducted in December of last year in New York, but this is something we're really looking forward to.
Well, certainly one of the things that I recall with you is your involvement with the Society of Christian Athletes and all your work in bringing really, your personal relationships and your religion into your life in a daily way. And do you feel that, that's been an important part of, along with athletics, with, putting that in your life?
Beth, it's the core of our life. It's the core of our marriage, and it's the basis of everything that we do with our children and grandchildren. I was introduced to the Fellowship of Christian Athletes by Paul Dietzel, given a chance along with the other athletes, football players, to go to summer conference. And we went, for about all 9 years that we lived in St. Louis. Our children were born there. As they were growing, we were taking them to at least 2 summer conferences each summer. And we've been a part of the organization for a long, long time. And the church is very important to me and to Judy. Christian fellowship one with another. We're involved in a couple of Bible studies during the week, and I'm involved at First Pres as a Sunday school teacher. Tom Sawyer and I teach the Tom and Jerry class, so we have a good time.
That's great.
It is.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, of course, the Sports Foundation has been important, that you've tried to bring some other exciting things to Baton Rouge as well.
You try to bid on everything you can bid that you can accommodate. And over the last 18 years, we've gone from starting to an organization that now our budget is up to about $250,000 a year, but we bring about $30 million a year of economic impact into the community. And the youngest we've had to compete is about 6, and the oldest is about 101. And it's fun to us. It gives our community an opportunity to be involved from a volunteer standpoint, but it gives people an awful lot of opportunity to come from all over the country. The bowlers are coming back, as you know, in 12, and they're going to leave about $100 million in town. So those kind of things are pretty significant.
Well, you're proud of being from Louisiana and being in Louisiana, aren't you?
Yes.
And what do you tell other people about Louisiana?
Well, you know, everybody's got their favorite food and their favorite music, and they're proud of their weather and all of that. But the difference maker, I think, between Louisiana and any place we've ever lived or been is our people. Judy and I were not born in Baton Rouge. Baton Rouge is our hometown by adoption. And I've never heard anybody tell me they adopted a child by accident. So when you make a decision, you want to go somewhere and live for the rest of your life. That's a pretty significant, pretty serious decision. And it's based on the people. Some of the most wonderful people that we've ever met in our life are here. We get a chance to share our life with them on a daily basis, and they with us. But I think the people are the difference makers here. In everything we do, in business, in government, and it's easy to be a part of this community because people make you feel welcome.
Well, Jerry, we were talking about your role now, patriarch of your family and many grandchildren, that you are the coach, though, are you not?
Well, I try to be. There are certain rules that you want to abide by all the time, and I'm not sure I could raise children in today's world. Things have changed dramatically, and I'm an old guy, and my grandchildren let Papa know that you don't understand anymore. You're kind of old.
My favorite is when you growing up. It was very clear as the coach. You said to your children about decision making, about who decided where you would go eat. Tell us that tale.
Well, as an assistant coach for Coach Dietzel and Coach McClendon, you didn't have much free time, and you only had one night a week off, basically. So we just decided as a family, we'll go out on one evening, Thursday evening for dinner, but here's what we're going to do. Mama will decide the first night where we go. Jody, who's the younger of the 2 children, will decide the second night, and Jay, you get the third night. Well, Daddy, when will you decide? I don't decide, because just being with y'all is what I want to do. Well, all of a sudden, Jay was a little upset because he's the older of the 2, and he thought he ought to go second. So you're always trying to train your children that young men, women go first. But that's my sister. Well, yes, she's your sister, and but you know, it took. He's a local attorney very, very well, and just has a beautiful wife and their 3 children. And the 2 boys respect the mama and the daughter.
Do you think that sports may be in the future for the next your grandchildren coming up?
They're enjoying it. They're U-High, and they're on they're trying to play basketball and football and run track, trying to do a lot of things at one time, and most of them are succeeding. Some they're learning, but my goodness, it takes so much time now compared to what they have to. I learned what they're learning out in the sandlot, just playing. These guys are under coaches and wearing equipment, and it's hot outside and all that other stuff. Well, it's different. So my wish for them is that they can learn the sport, but I don't know that sport's in the future, but the things that sports teach them will always be with them.
Well, certainly discipline, and certainly you have name recognition, and you certainly have a very clear sense of values and what goes first, second, third. Did anyone ever try and get you to run for office?
There were a couple of foolish guys that at one point in time sat me down for lunch. They lied. They said, we just want to have lunch with you. And they said, have you ever considered? And the answer was no, so the conversation was over, and lunch was very good. But that was about the extent of it. There are too many, in my opinion, there are too many other wonderful things for Jerry Stovall to be involved in and do. And now, I will tell you, too, that I'm 70. Now, Beth, that's not the right age to start a political career. You know, guys like Jay Darden, a good friend, has been in politics for a long time, planning and training, and I think we as a state are bearing the results now of his maturing as a man, but as a mature politician.
Well, now, Jerry, you look awfully good for 70. So do you have any tips for everyone out there now? Because, you know, you look pretty fit and great.
Well, thank you. I walk. I'm not a runner. They diagnosed me with a form of arthritis several years ago, so I walk in the afternoons. Judy kind of watches what I eat, or tries to watch what I eat. But I think the biggest thing is just try to stay active and going and don't sit around too much.
Well, what's in the immediate future for you? You're taking this trip in July, but anything else really exciting on the horizon?
No, just I think I'm going to have to work forever. A couple of 3 years ago, we were talking about retiring, and then the world went to heck in a handbasket, and Judy apologizes about once a week, and she says, darling, I'm sorry you're going to have to work the rest of your life.
That's probably a good thing.
That's
She'll make you work around here, too.
Well, and there are projects around here. There's always something to do here, and she's done a magnificent job getting this house ready for us. But I enjoy my work. I enjoy what I do. I enjoy the people that I do it with. I have no hobbies. My family and my work have always been my hobbies. I used to hunt a little bit with my son when he was growing up, but I really don't. I don't play golf, and I don't do a lot of other things. So.
But you like working with young people, though, too, I sense.
Oh, yeah.
That's an important thing, and being a mentor of sorts for them.
You know, if you can cause one young person to focus on what they do, if they become a better student, if they just become a better son or daughter, or they just stop some bad things that they're doing and start some good things, all of that's good, and the community prospers in that environment. So you just try to get one.
Well, I will tell you, you have an awful lot of good friends who say that you're just fun to be around, too. So that's one of the joys.
Well, friends are one of the greatest blessings that God can give you, and when you've got one, it's almost like family. It really is.
You probably have you met a lot of important people, as you might say. If you look back on a couple of highlights in your career, what would those be?
Well, if you're talking about people that you've met, had a chance to travel around the country and meet the individuals politically that I would have had no chance to meet otherwise. I've met an awful lot of people who thought they were very important. That one of the great things about the people that I played with and people that coached me, they taught me that humility is something important. That you can think good things about yourself, just don't say many of them out loud. And that's a good rule, I think. The biggest thing is that my senior year, we played Georgia Tech in Atlanta, and it was Coach McClendon's first year. It was an excellent ball game. We won. It was a game where I happened to take the second half kickoff and ran it back for a touchdown, and we happened to win the ball game. Well, my father-in-law had no son. I was the son that he never had, I think. And Judy had gone home to watch the ball game with her dad. He had had a heart attack. And the doctor came over to watch it with him, took his don't get excited pills, and she was there. So the ball game was on, and we won. So I got back home, and she wasn't there, and she had gone home. And I talked to my father-in-law, and I said, how'd you like it? And he said, well, I wish I could have been there.
Oh, yes.
He didn't play sport, and he'd come to watch me practice a little bit. He told me one day when he worked for Bancroft Paper Company, and he'd been to practice in spring. And that evening, I took him to eat dinner with the football team. Coach Dietzel allowed me to do that, but then we went home to our little apartment. And he said, son, does that happen every day? I said, what are you talking about, sir? And he said, that practice. And I said, well, yes, sir, we practice that hard every day. And he said, I don't know how we do it, but if you ever want to quit, I think we could get you through school anyway.
Oh.
He was so concerned about me personally, but he did not understand what sport was about and why you had to do some of the things you did. As it wore on, he understood more and more and more.
And you were saying there are certain aspects of being a competing athlete that you have to have not only the skill, but you have to have certain characteristics. And what are those?
I think that you have to have a burning desire to become the best you can be. See, I would like to be 6'4", good looking and rich. In the meantime, I got to do the best with what I've got. So when you sit down and somebody says, well, I can't play because my son can't play for LSU because he's too small or he's not fast enough. Phooey. Don't tell him that. Let him go out and compete. If he can get a chance to walk on that field and compete, you'll be surprised at what he or she can do. My idea is competition makes the world go around. You want to play? Then go play. Every field, Beth, I've ever walked on, the first day, I saw the guy that had my job. He was the guy that was number 1 on the depth chart. And that's where I wanted to be. Not to brag, not to boast. That was the position I wanted to be. I didn't want to be third best. I didn't want to be second best. I didn't want to take time to take 3 years to elevate or for them to graduate. He had something that belonged to me and I wanted it. So take that attitude and focus on that in anything that you do, no matter what it is. And those are the kinds of things that Dan McClure and Cecil Perkey and Pat Reiser, my coaches, taught me. And the things that Agnes Shaw, my guidance counselor, taught me. Paul Dietzel and Doc Broussard and Herman Lang ingrained those things in you. So when you got away from them, they were still your safety net. Those values that they taught you hold you instead when you turn 70 years old, too.
Well, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. Love visiting with you, and congratulations on many honors, and especially on being a Louisiana Legend.
Well, thank you. It is. Someone told me that, Jerry, you don't know what it means to you yet, and they were right. And I've told you privately, but I'll tell you publicly, it was a wonderful evening, and we thank you as a family.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you all for joining us for this conversation. I'm Beth Courtney. Good evening.
For a copy of this program, call 1-800-973-7246 or go online to www.lpb.org. Funding for this program was provided by the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting.